gas, boom, boom, boom. I be the party to the boom, boom, boom. Competition ready for they doom, doom, doom. Big in the pussy like boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. Like a wrecking ball, I bust it right through. Track killer, ain't nobody doing what it do. Chip on my shoulder, every dance I in the pool. Bet hit the gas, boom, boom, boom. I be the party to the boom, boom, boom. Competition ready for they doom, doom, doom. Big in the pussy like boom, boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. Like a wrecking ball, I'm bust it right through. Track killer, ain't nobody doing what it do. Chip on my shoulder, every dance I in the pool. I'm back to go get it, ain't done, I ain't finished. You losing, I'm winning, I'm grinning. I've been by my business, let critics be critics, and they want a percentage, ain't getting it. A critic can kiss it, can't get me to listen. I'm trending, been done it, been did it. They ain't got it like I do, I'm some people's idol. What can I say, man, I'm different. Big in the booth, I'm a spears on the beat. Better make it move, shit, it is on the beat. Y'all be hella funny, how I laugh at you, please. Do my thing, and there's people that are happy to please. You don't want a problem, lady, got you wet, skip a place. Then I bring the beast down, got you big, and me please. I was just playing with you, talking what you mean. I'm a villain, I'm a monster, ain't no trick or treat. I'm hella poppin', it ain't no discussion. Give me the beat, baby, I get the bustin'. They ain't my buddies, they fakers can trust them. Man, cause I'm pretty and with it, bug them. Critics be talking, they ain't saying nothing. Probably them buff, they head got a concussion. Building up boards like I do construction. On a beat, it's destruction, I bust it. Bow, better hit the gas, boom, boom, boom. I bring the party to the room, room, room. Competition ready for they doom, doom, doom. Big and I bust it like boom, 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 boom. Boom, boom, boom. Like a breaking ball, I'm bustin' right through. Track killer, ain't nobody doing what it do. Chip on my shoulder, away cause I in the pool. Better hit the gas, boom, boom, boom. I bring the party to the room, room, room. Competition ready for they doom, doom, doom. Big and I bust it like boom, 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 boom. Boom, boom, boom. Like a wrecking ball, I'm bustin' right through. Track killer, ain't nobody doing what it do. Chip on my shoulder, away cause I in the pool. Blowing the gas, put the pedal to the middle. I do my thing, I don't curve by the heckle. Muscle it through, bust it through, ain't being gentle, but the makeup on me fold and I push it like a pretzel. Everybody really tryna mess with my mental. I strive for the great, I ain't never finna settle. Use a little pimp, pick sweet, you a pebble. How she really talking big with this ain't even on my level. I be acting bullshit, people thinking I'm sedated. Gotta hate it, wanna hate me, cause I'm popping in a pretty go get it. Gotta get it on the top, they gotta get me hate about it. I be getting full of envy, hella petty. I for real, need to shut up what you talking to me. Never catch me walking, I take off on the beat. I be hot at the time, y'all be hot for the week. Really cooking up, booted if you can't say the hate. Blow is the sickest, it's wicked, it's nasty. Make people move, it's making them happy. Don't care what she talking, she with it, she wicked. Don't be bringing me down, cause that's childish and taking. Girls that be talking, be ratchet and trashy. He making me laugh, cause he think he could bear me. You gotta be popping it with it to head me. I'm in the front, gone ahead, take a best seat. Better hit the gas, boom, boom, boom. I bring the party to the room, boom, boom. Competition ready for they doom, doom, doom. Big in a pussy like boom, 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 boom. Boom, boom, boom. Like a wrecking ball, I'm bustin' right through. Track killer, ain't nobody doing what I do. Chip on my shoulder, always cause I in the pool. Better hit the gas, boom, boom, boom. I bring the party to the room, room, room. Competition ready for they doom, doom, doom. Big in a pussy like boom, 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 boom. Boom, boom, boom. Like a wrecking ball, I'm bustin' right through. Track killer, ain't nobody doing what I do. Chip on my shoulder, always cause I in the pool, yeah.
Welcome to the Good Pass Podcast with Reggie Gallen. What you just saw, it happened. Unfortunately, it happened. Everybody's talking about it. Maybe you guys haven't seen it yet, but if you follow sports at all, it's kind of the talk of every barbershop and anywhere that they're talking basketball, talking about the Michigan-Wisconsin game, and more importantly than the game, it's the incident that happened after the game. Coach Juwan Howard. If you don't know Juwan Howard is 17-year, maybe 18-year NBA player, played with the Michigan Fab Five back during my time, a little bit after me. Juwan has played for several NBA teams, had a stint with the Miami Heat, then finished up with the Miami Heat and became assistant coach for the Miami Heat, coaching under Coach Spo and I believe a little bit with Pat Riley when Pat Riley was still coaching. If not, definitely mentored by Pat Riley and brought into the Miami Heat family. Juwan Howard has always been, Coach Juwan Howard has always been a stand-up guy. He was a stand-up guy when he played at Michigan. He's a stand-up guy as he played in the NBA, and that's one of the reasons he lasted 17 years, 18 years. And always been known for being a good sportsman and a great basketball player. Had a stellar career in the NBA. I think he averaged 16, 17 points a game. Had some really good seasons in the NBA, and just one of the best Michigan players. I believe his jersey is retired in University of Michigan. If it isn't, it should be. But the incident after the game was basically just to give you a little bit of backdrop on the. You saw some of the stuff that took place. The melee with the coaches and teams, but The backdrop is that Coach Gard from Wisconsin called the timeout with about 20 seconds left on the clock, which could definitely be deemed disrespectful, unsportsmanlike. The game was already out of reach with 20 seconds on the clock. I think Michigan was down by 15, 16 points. And it can be taken as Coach Gard trying to rub it in Michigan's faces that we're beaten. And, if you're Michigan, you got to understand you're the talk of the town in that conference. The Big Ten Conference is all about Michigan. It has been for quite a while now. It used to be Indiana back in the early 80s and probably mid to late 80s. But it quickly became, when the Fab Five hit, all about the Michigan Wolverines. Matter of fact, prior to the Fab Five, some teams with Glenn Rice and Ramil Robinson and some really, really good teams back in the days, Lloyd Vaught and those teams, those were good Michigan teams. So Michigan, long story short, has kind of taken over Big Ten action as being the face of the conference. So everybody wants a piece of them, and Coach Gard was up by 15, 16 points and called a timeout. Juwan Howard, definitely, if you watched any of the game, if you didn't see the game, just understand that he had a look of disgust on his face that anybody would have recognized. Had you seen Juwan Howard's reaction to the timeout, the announcers called it out. It was definitely not something he was happy about. He showed the disgust in his face. I think many were wondering why the timeout was called, and I'll give some insight on what I think, in my opinion. And I've been around the game. Those of you who don't know me, I'm former point guard. I played at Auburn University back in the early 90s, had a couple of all-SEC years, so I kind of know the game a little bit. I coach AAU basketball. I've been doing that for 10, 15 years. And so really understand basketball. I know sometimes what goes on in the head of a coach. I've played for some really good coaches and kind of understand the dynamics. Juwan Howard was pissed. I think you could be a neophyte and understand he was pissed at the timeout. The announcers called it out. And so let me give you some of the backdrop. So with the timeout being called, one thing I want to say is if you're Michigan, yes, you're unhappy. You think that Coach Gard is kind of rubbing egg in the face and he's got to win over big Michigan. And, everybody wants to beat Michigan. I get it. I'm an Auburn Tiger right now. We're ranked number 3 in the country. Everybody wants a piece of Auburn, especially when we were ranked number 1. I get that. The piece that I've always, and even when I'm coaching AAU ball, I teach my kids. So one of the things that Juwan Howard probably wasn't thinking about is, the game is out of reach on both sides. So Michigan's not coming back. And I'm not trying to defend Coach Gard and what he did, because I think he had a lot of wrong in this as well. But, Michigan was still pressing, full court pressing like it was a 2-point game. And so they're hitting Wisconsin in the mouth with the press. Wisconsin can't get the ball across half court, so the coach calls a timeout. Now, I think that timeout was for a couple of reasons. I think one was, Coach Gard wanted to rub a little egg in the face on beating Michigan. I think the other one was, hey, listen, man, you're pressing me and the game is over. My guys can't get the ball across half court. I'm going to call a timeout. I don't want a 10-second count. And we're going to call a timeout because you're still hitting me in the mouth. One of the things I've always taught my kids, and this is where I understand the situation from both sides. I've always taught my kids when I'm coaching, play to the horn sounds. Play to the end of the game, to that last second ticks off the clock. That's what we teach our kids as coaches, right? So that's Juwan Howard's point of view, right? So now on the other side, if I'm Coach Gard, I always teach my kids, the easiest thing you can do for a defense is to not be aggressive and let them press you and not look to score, or not be aggressive against what they're doing. So it's kind of hard for Wisconsin to sit back and say, okay, we're going to turn the ball over, or we're going to give up a 10-second count when this team is still hitting us in the mouth and obviously the game is out of reach. So Michigan was all out pressing. They were diving for loose balls, and that's what you teach your kids. I get it. All right. But if you're Juwan Howard and you're the Michigan Wolverines, if you want the other team to stop, attacking or stop being aggressive, then you have to kind of pull back a little bit too. If you're going all out, then I'm teaching my kids to go all out as well, because all out needs to be reciprocated. All right. So when you back off a little bit, I'll back off a little bit. And I think that was probably the second or third reason for Coach Gard calling the timeout. It's like, you're still hitting me in the mouth. I got to fight back. And that's just the way it is. I understand, The fact that Juwan Howard and Coach Howard wanted to teach his kids play to that last horn sounds, last second ticks off the clock. I get it. But also, if you're Coach Gard, you're teaching your kids the same thing. So he called a timeout. Was it a little disrespectful? Absolutely. Absolutely. Game was out of reach. The timeout was not needed. Even with the 10-second call, the score probably would have ended exactly where it was, or Michigan would have got a garbage basket at the end, and it would have went from a 15-point win to a 13-point win. So what? You shake hands after the end of the game, and you keep it moving. Now, what happened is, now you're doing the hands, shaking hands after the game. Well, the announcer saw it before it even happened. They said Juwan Howard's not happy. He didn't go initially to the line to shake hands. And maybe that was to cool himself off because of how hot he was about the timeout. So he kind of walked away and went to half court, then proceeded to get in the line with his team and shake hands with Coach Gard. Once he gets to Coach Gard, you can see Juwan pull his mask down and utter the words, "I'll remember that. I'm going to remember that." And I'm sure there were a few expletives used, probably a few curse words used when he said that. And immediately Coach Gard's reaction was to reach out his hand and stop Juwan Howard in his tracks, which was a mistake. That is a mistake, all right, to touch Juwan Howard, Coach Howard, as he's walking by. And then Coach Howard proceeds to touch him back. And then the altercation starts. They do a little pushing and shoving. A few curse words exchanged. It got ugly quick. I mean, when you talk about Drake's song 0 to 100 real quick, it went 0 to 100 real quick. Not only with the coaches, and this is what I'm going to dive into, with the teams as well, right? Because, when you're playing for a good coach, which both of these guys are good coaches, the team is going to stand behind the coach and follow the lead of the coach. So now the players are getting involved. All right, so a lot of pushing and shoving goes on. And here's the straw that breaks the camel's back if you're Juwan Howard. Juwan Howard is arguing with Coach Gard. The assistant coach comes in, touches a Michigan player, and he didn't try to hit him or anything. He aggressively pushed him back, trying to separate his team from the Michigan player's team. Well, Juwan Howard came to his player's defense. He thought it was a little over-aggressive push from the Michigan coach, and oh, wow, here we go. Juwan Howard reaches across and smacks or kind of face checks, or however you want to put it, kind of face checks the assistant coach. And that's where the scrum starts. You get a couple of Michigan players and Wisconsin players throwing blows. I actually saw a couple of punches thrown, some swings of the hands and things of that nature. Most of these kids are from backgrounds where, you're taught to fight and defend yourself and all that good stuff. So situation got ugly. I don't want to dive too deep into who did what, but that is the meat and potatoes of what happened. It got real ugly. I think the big slap that Juwan Howard did on the assistant coach was totally uncalled for, totally over the top from everybody's standpoint. I believe there may be some people that disagree with me, and that's okay. We're going to see things in a different way. I think that's where Juwan stepped out of bounds big time. There was no reason to swing a blow at anybody. As a coach, you're a leader of men. And this is, where I defend. And what happened with Juwan Howard, if you don't know, he was suspended for the rest of the season, which is basically 5 games, suspended for the rest of the regular season. Let me clarify, just the regular season. And then he'll be able to coach in the Big Ten tournament. He'll be able to coach in the NCAA tournament, depending on how far Michigan goes. So that was his punishment. I think a well-deserved punishment. I think he earned that punishment. Even his buddy, his longtime friend, Jalen Rose, who has his own podcast and talk show, came on and talked about, that he was rightfully suspended. I think Michigan and the Big Ten had to step in and do something because you're a leader of men at this point. And I'm born in inner city Miami. I'm from Liberty City, went to an inner city high school. I have some hood in me. A lot of us have hood in us. But when you get older and you start becoming a leader of men, I know a lot of people don't want to be a role model or set the example, but, you're in a position of Juwan Howard. You're a leader of men. And so when the guys behind you, those young, 18, 19, 20-year-olds are going to follow what you do, you've got to set a better example than that. So for me, I think he was out of line with the slap. I think he got his penalty. If I know Juwan Howard, who's always been a stand-up guy, like I think I know Juwan Howard. He'll take that penalty and with acceptance and understand that, I did the do. I got to take the crime that comes with the do. And so he'll sit those 5 games out and come back a better person because of it. Coach Gard, I'm not quite sure what's happening on his end. I would think that he was reprimanded in some kind of way from Wisconsin. I haven't heard much about it because all the focus has been on Juwan Howard because he was a little more aggressive in the altercation. And so I think the punishment was well justified. He took his 5-game suspension, and I think he'll come back and understand that he's got to be a little bit better leader than that. And I think all the pieces will fall in place where they need to be, and people will move on. I think the next time both teams play, it'll be intense. It'll be a passionate game. Both teams will want to win, but I think they'll both learn from the mistake and move on. I don't think anybody deserves to be terminated or fired. Juwan has done an awesome job at Michigan and has brought their basketball back to prominence. And so I think all will be well on that end. But that's just my take on it, folks. Trust me, I don't take it personal if you disagree with me. I do understand there's different opinions about it. Some may bring the race issue in, which is could be. I don't see it that way. I think in this particular case, I think right is right and wrong is wrong, and both sides were wrong. I think Juwan had a little bit more wrong in it because he was a little bit more aggressive and didn't set a good example as far as being violent and being physical. He didn't set that example with his team, but everybody's gonna look at it a different way. Probably that's my take on it. I don't take it personal. Leave some comments. I'm all good with that, and talk about how you feel about it. But that's where I am with it. I think Juwan Howard will become a better person because of the incident that happened. I don't support any of it that happened, but I do understand in heated situations, people do things that you do in heated situations, and they both are heated. I get it. We're human. At the end of the day, I probably would have done the same thing. And if not, I definitely would have thought about it because I'm hot and I like to win. I hate losing. And you just beat me and now you called the timeout. So who knows how I would have reacted to that. I was a pretty intense player. I'm not as intense on the sideline when I'm coaching because I'm setting that example. And the last few years I've coached young ladies in travel ball, the AAU ball. So you definitely want to set a good example for your your team. So that's where I am with it. Please send all the comments that you like. Let me know where you guys stand on it. But I think the thing was handled the right way, and both teams and both coaches will move on and do big things because of it. The next podcast I definitely want to do a podcast down the line on should teams even shake hands after an intense game like that. That's always been a discussion too. You've played a heated game. Nobody wants to lose. And at the end of all that, you line these competitive 18, 19, 20-year-olds up and competitive coaches in a very competitive sport like basketball, and you tell them to walk by each other and shake hands. Yeah, sportsmanship. I get it. Yeah, sportsmanship. But I ain't tried to hear that as a player sometimes. So I wanted to win. I was a good sportsman. I did shake hands, and I do believe in it. But it is a question, and it's up for debate. And both sides will have, a pretty good argument with that. But, and the pandemic probably taught us something because we couldn't shake hands during the midst of the pandemic. And so I don't think any harm was done in that. So maybe something teams need to look at. I think the NBA looked at it a while ago and doesn't force teams to shake hands. The guys who really know each other and hang out, they'll meet and greet at half court. But I just, it's another question for another podcast. But think about that, folks. And when I do the podcast on that, feel free to chime in. Once again, Good Pass Podcast with Reggie Gallen. This podcast is brought to you by Primrose Herbals. We are getting people healthy one natural product at a time. Try our natural, all natural hemp products or other all natural products at www.primroseherbals.com and get yourself healthy in 2022.